I just launched a crowdfunding campaign for my second book to Private Ford Rayburn, and I figured I'd deviate a little bit from ranting about how much I hate the book industry and published authors and a bunch of other crap to talk about the book, my new book, and also talk about the writing process that led me to write this book. Because initially I actually did want to talk more about the writing process. I do think people are interested somewhat, every time I've talked to people about writing or said, I'm an author, they're always like, well, how do you do it? How do you come up with it? I'm like, I don't know, okay? I just do. But that's not entirely true. There are some things, there's something to it. There's more to the writing process. So for me, I've always been a writer, or I've always wanted to write. For a while there, my family was kind of pushing me into art, and while I'm decent enough, I haven't practiced in a very long time. I remember when I was taking art classes when I was 9 years old or something, and it was me and a couple other girls in this one class, and we had this friendship going on, and it was great, and we learned a lot, and the teacher really inspired us. But halfway through, this 5-year-old came into the class, and the teacher kind of looked at her and her mother and said, this is the wrong class for her. She's too young. This is supposed to be an 8 to 10-year-old group range. And the mother's like, no. She's good enough. And this 5-year-old sat down and started to draw. And I can't speak for the rest of the girls, but I think we all kind of did collectively realize that we were nowhere near as good as this 5-year-old. And for me, while I probably couldn't have expressed it then, I think that was the moment where I realized I wasn't going to do art, because I didn't have what this 5-year-old had. Instead, I started writing, and I had always written. I ever since I was really young, I was writing before I could read. No, true story. Because there's a lot that goes into reading, people. It's not just knowing how to say letters and sounds and stuff. It's reading. But I would fill out my journals, and because of how much I was writing in my journal when I was in first grade, the teacher had to make a rule based off me that we could only do 1 page a day in our journal, because I finished mine in a month. And I hated that, because I just wanted to keep going. And yeah, when we put our stories on the board, everyone's, write creatively, whatever. You'd have My Happy Family or whatever. Mine was a vampire fan fiction, because we had just watched the Mel Brooks movie the night before, Dracula Dead and Loving It. So maybe if people had been more savvy, they would have realized that maybe it's not art, maybe it was writing. And that's always been my life, where I'm constantly coming up with stories. When I go to sleep at night, I don't think about my day, I don't think about the coming days, I don't think what I'm going to be doing. I think about what I'm going to write. I think about a story in my head. So even when I'm having writer's block, or I have a writer's drought where I wasn't writing for a couple years there for various reasons, I was still telling myself stories, my original thoughts and ideas and works. And that's what To Private Ford Rayburn originally was. So when I was in high school, we had this project one year where we wrote to soldiers overseas, and this was back in the 2000s, so yeah. And me being, 16, 17, and being very romantic and going to an all-girls school, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get a reply from a soldier. Yeah, it turns out the letters didn't actually, go to individual soldiers. They went to a collective group of soldiers, and of course no one replied. We got a response from the squad that the letters were sent to, being like, thank you for your letters and your gifts, because it was around the holidays. And I was like, yeah, I probably should have expected that, but I think the romanticism really got to me. So a couple years, or a year or two after that, I forgot how long it was, like, I don't remember when this happened, I was babysitting, and I had a notebook with me, and I was just bored, and I had actually just watched Big Fish, the Tim Burton movie, and I really loved the scene in the circus where he sees the girl, and he's like, I'm going to marry her. And for some reason, the two ideas combined in my head of the letter writing with no reply, and the guy going, this is the girl for me, this is the only girl for me. So I wrote like 30 pages that night, handwritten, of the original the original draft of this book. And the original draft of this book was soppy, to say the least, melodramatic. It was a love story. Pretty much that was it. I only had they meet, they have this whirlwind romance, they get married. Oh yeah, Night Castle was also part of the inspiration for this. If you know the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, their CD, The Night Castle, there's lots of inspirations. This was not a glorified fan fiction. I still had my own original ideas here, but I was just combining a lot of thoughts and ideas into this one story about a soldier who meets the love of his life. They get married, and then he is missing in action. And at the time, the story did not have an adventure plot. It wasn't really from his perspective. It was mostly from the girl's perspective. And it was mostly her pining away, the only one who believes he isn't dead, and then he comes back to her, and he's like the hero, because I don't even know. It's been that long, and I've actually lost this original draft in the first 30 pages I wrote of this. So I just remember it being ridiculous, and it was not going to go anywhere. And so I think when I was 18, I thought, this was kind of it's an idea, maybe I'll go somewhere. And then I started to kind of turn it into that story where I could express a lot of my more adventurous ideas or action ideas without actually having to commit. So I think in the writing world in general, there's kind of a dearth of action pieces in books. I think there might be an argument of like, well, movies kind of fulfill that so well, so if you're gonna do action, it's really more visual medium than it is a written medium. But I would argue that's a little bit limited, and also you don't actually see a lot of action in historical novels either. I mean, I think at most you might get something like in the Iliad and the Odyssey, and then if you've read the Iliad, you know a lot of the action is, oh my gosh, you're my brother! Yeah, great, I know you, you're this guy, let's switch armor and then kill each other. Because a lot of it is just a genealogy. So I do think there are good action books out there. I personally have not read a lot. I think ones that we think of, like Lord of the Rings, while the action set pieces are really good in Lord of the Rings, it takes a while to get there. We don't talk about that enough. I love fun, pulpy, noir, adventure-y stuff. I just never thought I could write it. And so I regulated a lot of the pulpy adventure to this story. Like, it grew from just a melodramatic love story to suddenly, like, she was going overseas to go rescue the guy and getting caught, and he had to rescue her, and etc., etc. And when it got to that point, and there was a point in this where there were like poison bullets. Like that was a plot point where she got shot with a bullet that was poisoned, and then it's this race against time to get the antidote, right? At that, I think I knew this was ridiculous. I'm not writing this. This is not happening. And so I don't know why, but at some point I told my husband about this story, and he said, "You know, I kind of want to read it." And I'm like, "No, you don't. You really don't." And he's like, "Why not? It's a pulp adventure story." And I'm like, "It wasn't always that way. It's more melodramatic than that." But like, no, maybe. I was like, maybe one day. And then when I was publishing my first book, The Chaos Child, I was getting stressed and overwhelmed and just tired of the whole thing because I've been reading it over and over and over again. And I was like, I decided I wanted to do NaNoWriMo that year. I will do a whole video on NaNoWriMo. Ooh, I'm going to have to do that soon because that's coming up. But I will do it. But yeah, I just decided, you know what, that's a good way to just keep the momentum going, get my writing juices flowing, especially because I had to work on the novella that I was writing for the Chaos Child Special Edition. And so I needed a break from that, so I just needed something stupid, essentially. And it's like, what better way to do that than do a NaNoWriMo? And he suggested, my husband, do that crazy soldier story you have. I went, okay, I'm gonna do it. But I'm going to do it as a satire on romance novels, potentially a satire on pulp novels. Except I hadn't read a lot of action books or thriller books at that point, so I started reading some thriller books. And then I realized how dumb those were. They're the other side of romance novels, and sometimes worse. But at the time, I just went, you know what, it's satire, it's parody, I can make this as ridiculous as I want it to be. And I did. And I was also having trouble writing it. I got through it. I got through the Nano, but I was like skipping whole scenes just to write what I had in my head for years and years and years that I just wanted to, like, it's like, fine, if I have free reign to put it on paper, I will put it on paper. And I got to the poison bullet scene. So my husband had been reading it with me as I was writing. This was to, hold me accountable, but also I was like, hey, I want some feedback of like, am I doing this? Is this what you wanted? And so I got to the poison bullet scene, and he read it, and then he turned to me and went, this is too stupid. Rewrite it. And I just went, too stupid? This is supposed to be stupid. This is supposed to be the most moronic story I've ever written. You're asking me to take what is essentially my bedtime story that I put myself to sleep with and laugh at and put all the stupid ideas that I have as an author into, and you want me to rewrite it? So I finished the novella, and then that summer I opened it up again, went back to it, and went, okay, fine, let's rewrite it. So in the first draft, the girl, whose name was not Marnie at the time, it was mostly told from her perspective, so everything that was going on with Ray, the main character, which, by the way, his name has been there the entire time. He's always been Ray. Ford Rayburn, named for Ford Prefect in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Rayburn because I misread Bradbury. Ray Bradbury. Am I getting that right? Did I misread it again? Yeah, so he became Ford Rayburn. And yeah, I didn't tell the story from his perspective at all. And my husband's suggestion was, well, why don't you try? I went, what? Because it was supposed to be a big reveal in the book that he was still alive. Because the plot is that he still goes missing. They have a whirlwind romance, and he still goes missing in action. And there was supposed to be, she's investigating it. Marnie is investigating it, and she finds out he's alive and goes to find him. But it was supposed to be this big reveal when it eventually, you know. And I was just like, well, why? Just what is he doing in the 3 years that he's gone? So I was like, okay, fine. What is he doing? So I wrote the spy espionage scene, the one that I have an excerpt to linked below that you should all check out. And if you like it, please support me on my support me on my campaign. And I don't know what happened, because I had never written anything like that before. I had never done pulp action adventure. I always thought I couldn't do that sort of thing. To be fair, I don't think a lot of people think they can do it, or a lot of people don't do it. It is hard. Admittedly, it was a huge challenge, but I started writing, and it all started to come out. And I got to the end of that scene and I went, yeah, you know what? I need to rewrite this. And I did. And suddenly all the scenes I had been skipping and couldn't write started to come out. And I just had the entire book. And as I was writing, I also went, okay, this is too big. I'm going to have to split this into 2 books. And so I have To Private Ford Rayburn, which is done, obviously. That's why we're crowdfunding it. And then there's also yours, Marnie Rayburn, the sequel, which would have been 1 book, but is now a sequel book, that is almost done. It's in the editing phase, which means I have to put in all the scenes I didn't quite finish and then go to the grammar and copy editing and all that stuff. And it's crazy to me because in that 1 year that I wrote To Private Ford Rayburn, which was last year, and yours, Marnie Rayburn, I have written more than I ever have in my entire life. I felt more inspired by it than I've ever felt before. I was writing things I never thought I could write. I was like doing it. Like, and at the end of the day, I was like, I think it's one of the better stories I've ever had. And it was my dumb, stupid satire. But I think that's what's so beautiful about writing, or what I love about writing, especially when you have something like this where you just go, whatever, I don't care. So the characters can tell the story. And what the characters will tell you, I don't know, it's amazing. And most of writing this was just some of the most amazing writing experiences I've ever had. And I'm really proud of it. I am really proud that I challenged myself and I wrote something that I never thought I ever could. Like, I thought I was going to be a fantasy writer when I was in high school and even my early 20s. And a lot of people keep saying that, of like, weren't you supposed to be the fantasy writer? And I'm like, yeah, people change. And I now have this renewed interest in, like, hey, maybe I want to write more like this. These espionage novels, these action novels, it's fun. It's fun to write and it's fun to read. It's not the easiest to write, which is why I think a lot of people don't, but I don't know. I had so much fun writing it. And while I'm thoroughly sick of it now, and I'm like really not looking forward to having to edit the second book, this is the book I actually wanted to put out when I when I tell myself you write what you want to read, I'm realizing even in high school, this is what I wanted to read.